the impact of social anthropology and health, or the relationship, how interrelated are they? We first have to understand first of all, what is anthropology? So because most of the time you start losing out from the word go when you don't understand the definition of the words that have been used. So I advise you, in these days, there's enough information out there. When you start reading a text or starting reading a notes and you start having problem understanding the words that are being used, stop right away, go find out what are the meaning. Because if you don't find out and you don't understand the meaning, it will take you a lot of time to understand. And in most cases, you will not even understand. So you have to understand what they are talking about. So first of all, what is anthropology? Is the systematic study of humanity with the goal of understanding our evolutionary origin, our distinctiveness, and the great diversity among people. So that's one definition. Another definition is the scientific study of humanity concerned with human behavior, human biology, and societies in both the present and the past, including human species. So this is very, very important. I would like to go with the second definition, which deals with the scientific study of humanity concerned with human behavior, human biology, and societies in both the present and the past. What has human behaviors been in the present and the past? Have we changed in the way we behave? Based on knowledge, information, and skills being available with the help of technology, has this changed human behavior? So because now when you talk of social anthropology, it studies the pattern of behaviors. See, today we are going to study the pattern of human behavior as it relates to health. That's the main focus here of this chapter. How does our behavior influence our health, either in the positive or negative way? So now we can go, in fact, in some you will see cultural anthropology. Again, how does human culture influences their behavior? Say, because it's very, very important for us to know what you see people do in terms of their behavior or whatnot. Most of the time, there is that tendency of, especially when you start talking about the Western culture, to look down on people's behavior as being primitive or this. See, you as a health educator, that's the wrong approach that you should take in dealing with different cultures. Different group of people have certain behavior patterns. And you have to understand those behavior patterns. Don't start to grade them. This is good behavior, this is bad behavior. Most of the time, why are these people behaving this way? There's always reason. You always, the more you ask the why question, the better informed you will be in whatever you do. Don't just take it for granted because it's said this way, therefore it's no, why? So that you understand why things happen, especially when it comes to health. Why people engage in certain behaviors. What are some of the motivating factors? What the, gives predisposes them to this sort of situation? What makes it easier for them to engage in this behavior? Because once you ignore those things, then you might come up with this idea of, oh, this group are barbaric, this group is this group are uncivilized, don't do that. Because that is the behavior that they have used to exist, even though it might not be the best in terms of their health, but you have to respect individual differences, individual behaviors. Once you know more, you can go there and explain to them why some of this behavior pattern contributes to certain problems. But don't just go from the start, just looking at it based coming from the Euro kind of the Western form of behavior pattern that you expect. You think, oh, well, Africans are primitive or Indians are primitive or Chinese are. Don't do that. Start to understand, first of all, why people do things the way they do it. And once you know why, if you have something better, try to educate them about, okay, this sort of behavior. Say, for instance, when there was an outbreak of Ebola in West Africa, a lot of people died because of the way West Africans mourn the dead. People have this way of almost going very hawking the corpse, churching, saying goodbye, and in the process of doing that, they became infected. A lot of people died as a result. And no sooner that information was made known to them that once somebody dies of Ebola and there is some blood and body fluids everywhere, you stay away from the corpse. Don't touch the corpse. Because if you touch the corpse, you will be infected. No sooner they understood that, the corpse, when they die, they were left alone, and medical professionals or people with the right type of gear were able to dispose of the corpse. Because just telling them this was, it was, what you're doing is primitive, is this. No, that was the way they say goodbye. And you have to explain to them the reason why that sort of behavior is, it could be detrimental to their health. And once they understood it, the infection, the transmission rate reduced. And eventually the whole Ebola situation was kept under control. Okay, now to identify how social anthropology contributes to understanding of health and illness. How different cultures. Again, going back to what I was saying, there are certain cultures that have not yet come to the point wherein they believe that diseases are caused by microbes or are caused by certain behavioral patterns, certain things we eat that contribute to some of those situations. So in most cases, there is this misunderstanding because everything is relational. I have a good health because my relationship with everybody within the community is great. But if I have a bad health, maybe I have a dispute with one member of the community that has placed a curse on me, and that curse makes me ill. See, these are all things that, is this scientific? No. There's no scientific relations between, but that's the belief system. And you have to take them from that belief system to where you want them to understand the scientific concept, the scientific relationship between what happened within your biology to impact your health. How something outside your body can get into your body and makes you sick. And it's not because of voodoo or witches or a curse or whatnot. To identify how culture as a social context relates to and affects health. What is social anthropology? Social anthropology is the study of all aspects of society from a cross-cultural perspective. All aspects of society, relationship, some of those social structures. Say, for instance, in our situation in America, wherein there is some of these social constructs wherein you have different cultural perspective of white, blacks, Indians, Chinese, and human constructs that have been created also, barriers, which makes it difficult for certain group of people to access quality product or produce, and also to access healthy physical activities or to access the medical service. See, these are all certain things. Whenever you talk about social anthropology, all of these things play a part. What is, first of all, what is the knowledge base of the patient? What is the economic structure or the economic situation of the patient? What class do they belong to? High class, low class, middle class? Because most of the time, the lower your class within the society, the worse your health prognosis. Due to you are likely to live in an environment that is toxic. You are likely to live in an environment that is poor housing. You are likely not to have access to health care. You are likely to have poor quality of food source. Your source comes from convenience stores, which in most cases do not carry the healthiest type of food. Unlike those who live in upper class, they have grocery stores and multiple, not only one, but every other, so that they have a choice of using this or whatnot, so that they can put together a healthy diet. You see, unlike lower classes, most of the time what you have more stores selling alcohol, more stores selling tobacco, and all those other issues that contribute to poor health. So you have the history of the historical anthropology was concerned with the exotic culture. Contemporary anthropology is concerned with all cultures. It's not only those outliers, those, they are contemporary anthropology is concerned with all cultures because there is something we can learn from each culture. That is this, I don't want to, I don't get the assumption that all cultures are bad. No, that first of all, that culture has kept those people alive to the point that they exist as a human being. So there is something good in it. But the beauty of study is you get new knowledge, you use that knowledge to promote the quality of life. Because people have been able to survive all these years with that same culture or that same behavior does not necessarily mean it cannot be made better. There's always possibility because even the so-called Western culture, there are certain things within the Western culture that can be improved on. Certain attitudes that can be improved and can be improved on. The anthropology of health and illness explores the social and cultural dimensions of health, ill health, and medicine, the relationship. The contribution of anthropology to understanding of health. Now, ethnographic studies have demonstrated that illness and medical care are socially constructed according to the cultural context in which we live. It's a different group. When you study a different ethnicity, have shown us that illness and medical care is socially constructed according to the cultural context in which we live. Those people who live in high class, highly educated, a lot of material resources, most cases have a different and easy access to medical care, have a different perception when it comes to illness and medical care. They can afford it. They can do those necessary changes that are needed to improve their health. Unfortunately, for those that live in certain situations wherein there's little or no resources, those in the lower class, again, everything is, when it comes to dealing with health-related issues, quality of health, there is a big difference based on the class you belong to. If you are at the bottom, all the health indicators move in the negative directions for you. In the middle, they're okay. At the top, they are usually all move towards the positive. So it's very, very important for us as we study this various aspects or various entities. Your social class also impacts your your behavior. And most of the time, your environmental situation can impact the sort of behavior you engage in. And most of the time, that behavior might not necessarily be a positive behavior for good health. So it's not that people are innately born to behave poorly. It's the environment in which they are born into, the resources that are available or lack of. And because there is that innate desire to survive, people will engage in certain things that will be detrimental to their health as well as their freedom. Ethnographic studies have shown how therapeutic interventions can be influenced by cultural practices. Same, ethnographic studies have explored the attitudes of professions in relations to healthcare and health promotions. In summary, medical anthropology explores health and illness within its cultural context because culture is important in relations to health. Bottom line. Culture and health. Individual health is affected by social context, including cultural influences. There are certain cultural practices within different groups that can influence our health. Say, for instance, in the Western culture, being thin is considered being healthy. And say in some other cultures, being overweight is considered healthy. Both of these cultures have issues. Being overweight places more challenges in your organs and in your body, and down the road will lead to early death. Being excessively thin also impacts your overall health. So in most cases, people have to know what is their proper weight based on their height, so that you know when you are overweight or when you are underweight. Culture is the collective beliefs, assumptions, and values that are communicated between people within a society. Try to understand that as culture is a collective beliefs, those things that people believe in the culture, the assumptions that are made and values that are communicated between people within society. Say most cultures are, say, family. We are all one. It takes the village to raise the child. See, these are very good beliefs that people have in respective cultures. And you have some cultures wherein it's just the nuclear family. My family is just me, my wife, and kids. Might have some values, but down the road, there could be some limitations. Because again, We do well when we exist in a community, when we are part and parcel of the community, when we use our resources collectively to improve the quality of our community. Just using your resources just for your family is great, but that does not really make you healthy. Put simply, culture is how we make sense of and understand social world in which we live. Hellman, okay, defines culture as an inherited lenses through which the individual perceives and understands the world. You say that's why most of the time you people say, okay, now why is it that within there are almost two sort of cultures and there's in there is or more, depending on what you're talking about. You still have some people in America that looks down on other people. Why? Some of these things, as they said, inherited lenses, passed on history. You take two kids, a black kid and a white kid, you keep their parents away from them, those kids can relate to each other much better. No sooner you start having the parents, they start telling their stories and their perceived views of the other group, they start to separate. White kids, black kids, during elementary, they are good. No sooner they get to middle school, they start understanding, they start to hear and make sense of what they have been told about the other group and what happened. They separate. So at times, culture is great, but culture has to also make sure that they really impact or translate or transfer certain beliefs the right way rather than creating a lot of misconception or diminishing one group over the other. We all live in specific cultural context, which functions as either positive or negative determinant of health, which is very true. We all live in a specific cultural context, which functions as either a positive or negative determinant of health. How do we relate? What sort of relationship do we have? What sort of relationship do we encourage in our culture? What are our beliefs, our value system about other people? How do we perceive other people? What resources are there within the culture that enhances proper health? So these are all things that are very, very important. Culture and health. Culture determines health and illness in many ways. Culture shapes our perception of illness and views of how we are expected to behave when we are ill. say most of the time, depending on certain situations. In some cases, some cultures, just because of certain financial needs, or depending on what part of the culture, what part of society, the lower class, most of the time they will be ill, but will not want to say they are ill. Because again, when you are ill, most of the time you look down upon. And they cannot afford to say, okay, I want to stay home because I'm ill. Because if they do, they lost benefits, they lost pay, and they cannot take care of their kids. So most of the time when we talk about health, some of these differences, people have to deal with illness in a different context. Somebody with the right type of insurance, somebody with the right this, they can be having a minor headache and they can take time off to deal with that illness. While somebody at the lower class can be dealing with a migraine and they will have to force themselves to go to work. A good example of what just happened, what is happening right now. When there was this outbreak of the COVID-19, this idea of people can stay home and work. Okay, to stay home and work does not mean you stay home and work. First of all, you have to have the right equipment to support that idea. You have to have a good internet connectivity. You have to have a good computer. If you don't have those things, right away is how can you work? And it's not in hot homes that have those possibilities. So what happened? Those people in the middle class and upper stayed home, continue to work, get their paycheck. Those that are in the lower class, most of them, because of what they do, service, they have to do a lot of manual labor. So what happened? They had to go to work, stand next to each other, transmitting this virus from one person to another. And some had to, some, because of the infection, some died. And those at the upper level, most of the time, you heard about protective means, protective gears, protective what? Some people don't have the means. So in most of the time is there are certain things within the culture or within the society that really influences some of these things that people have to succumb to. Different societies have varying rules and cultural understandings, leading to an array of illness, interpretation, and experiences. People's perception of health and illness are largely shaped by the culture in which they are located. Again, you have some macho cultures wherein being sick is a weakness. So what do? People hide. Or there are certain illnesses that are considered taboo. Mental illness is stigmatized to be something very, very negative, and so people shamed. You're shamed. So what do? You hide it. People can be dealing with depression because of the way society interprets some of those things. Patients go untreated, and eventually that can lead to their health demise. HIV, negative stereotype, negative stigma. People would rather die of it. And there are certain situations wherein, it's getting better. Even things like cancer. People don't want to share that information just because the way society will look at you. So all of these things are things that culture or society should have a better way wherein when somebody is ill, most of the time it's not a fault of theirs. And they should not be penalized the second time. First of all, being ill is a punishment already. And being perceived by culture, by society in a negative way adds the burden to the person who is ill. So cultures does considerably more than shape illness as an experience. Yeah, it shapes the very way we conceive illness. Okay, different cultures again have a different ways of dealing with certain conditions. The man illustrates that childbirth in the Netherlands is viewed as a natural and healthy condition where medical intervention is not necessary and therefore is limited. Women are supported by a midwife and gives birth at home. Comparatively, the experience in the UK and the US is more than medicalized, viewed in terms of risk to mother and unborn child and unborn child, and therefore supervised by medical practitioners at regular intervals, with birth taking place in the hospital setting. Again, these are all different cultural practices. And first of all, everything being normal, childbirth is a natural biological function. When everything goes well, it's a natural. The mother has the ability to give birth to her child. If she is healthy, the child is healthy, the birth canal is properly situated so that the child can be born, can give birth to the child. And in most cases, that has been the practice. But as with any biological function, there are certain times when things go wrong. The child did not retreat properly so that the head is ready to get out rather than the feet first. That can lead to complication, breach. Or the mother is not healthy enough to be able to push the child out. Some other things can happen. Or it could be a stillbirth. So either way it has its merit and demerit. The only thing now is in the Western world is, as with anything, it starts good and later on it becomes abused. Now, in the Western world, most of the time, some women don't even want to go through the natural birthing of a child. They choose C-section. Open up the mother, take the child out. In some cases, it's okay because if the dilation of the cervix does not dilate to the point wherein the child can pass through, is understandable. But in certain times, it's available. The mother don't want to go through the labor pain, and all they want is just go, open her up, take the child out, close her in, and so again, there are positive and advantages to some of these things, but childbirth varies within different communities or different countries or societies. First of all, it's a natural birth, it's a biological condition, the biological process, and where it can be supported, it should be supported so that at the end of the process, you want a healthy mother and a healthy child. You don't want a unhealthy mother and unhealthy child because survival, somebody will have to give, and you don't want that. Cultural interpretations of pain. See, this is also one of the issues that even in the Western countries, even in America, there is a study wherein people think Africans do not experience pain. How did that study came to light and be accepted? I don't know. Because it's wrong. African American, they experience pain just as whites, and they should be helped in managing those situations. And when a patient says, I'm in pain, it's not, he or she is not faking it. He or she is in pain and should be treated appropriately and not rely on some of this cultural BS that has been promoted that, oh, blacks don't feel pain. Yeah, blacks feel pain just as white. And when they ask for their pain to be managed, there should be equal support, just as what is done for whites. People make sense of their symptoms in different ways and acting according to their cultural beliefs, how we respond to illness. Again, some of this, I've said my piece. Argued that, okay, pain was viewed differently among ethnic groups when he conducted a study in a New York hospital looking at patient, doctor, nurse, and parents of children. All Americans by birth responded with stoicism. Well, again, there is the notion that you always have to act strong. Crying or complaining about pains is a sign of weakness, but that does not mean people are not in pain. You see, some of these things we are done because by then the culture was sure that when you cry, oh, he's a wimp, he's a sissy, or this, call all sort of names. So what do people do? They put that stoic, as the macho, while in reality, they are in pain. You have Irish patients denied their pain. Italian patients were concerned about getting pain relief. Jewish patients focused upon what the pain meant in terms of their future health. Now, illness, behaviors, and socially divided. Illness behavior is socially divided. Illness behavior is also influenced by division within societies as well as between them. Middle class people are more likely to exhibit illness and health seeking behaviors when compared to working class people experiencing the same symptoms. I already said it. They can afford it. They can afford to stay employed and have time to deal with their illness, but lower class people usually do not. So the best you can do is suck it up. Unfortunately, it's like, and trying to do that just to put up with the pain. And at times, putting up with the pain can lead to more serious situations that somebody can lose their life. So these are all, the class system. Braxton and Peterson argue that underclass children's symptoms were only recognized as an illness when they interfered with functionality. Say they only recognized as illness when it interferes with functionality, suggesting that minor symptoms were more likely to be ignored within the lower social class. Say, how many times have there been situations wherein the mother has to go to work and the child is saying, Mom, I have a headache. And mom is just like, child, take an aspirin and go to school. The only time that mom or the situation when the child is almost seriously ill, cannot function in a normal way. This is not true for the middle class and upper class. So when you talk of society and health, there is a big divide because of all the social constructs, the social varieties, the social preconceived notions about one group against the other, or about one level of class against the other level of class. Studying illness accounts have led to useful insight into the meaning attached to specific illness. Kelman distinguishes illness problems, practical difficulties caused by the illness related to social cultural expectations. This often includes shame associated with disfigurement and loss of normal functioning, and frustrations associated with not being able to perform usual roles such as work. Illness complaints These are the descriptions that the patient bring to the practitioner. These do not necessarily include descriptions of the illness problems. So there are different ways in which people explain. Say when a lower class goes to a practitioner, the way they explain their problem most of the time is slightly different from a middle class. There are times wherein the lower class will almost try to downplay the severity of their illness, while the upper class at times might overplay the severity of their illness. So they get immediate attention because most of the practitioners are of the same culture and they believe what they are saying. Most of the time, depending on the attitude of the practitioner, do not even believe what people from lower class say about their own health situations. So, okay, going to end class here today. And again, take time to read this and see how some of this, if you have encountered some of this in your interaction between you and your health provider, wherein did he or she take your complaint seriously, or were they trying to downplay it? Or did you go there with the intention of downplaying the severity of your pain because that's the way you think? So the key thing is try as best as possible to explain the way you feel. When you started feeling it, or whatever happens to trigger that sort of feeling, go to your doctor as an informed consumer. You're going to the doctor because you're not feeling well. You explain your symptoms the way you feel them. And most of the time, don't allow the doctor to sway, because that's at times they play that game as well. If the pain is sharp, say it's sharp. It's not dull pain, or they say it's a sharp pain. And also make sure that the doctor provides that environment wherein you feel comfortable to explain your situation. Anything less than that, you're not getting the service that you are paying for. And you have a choice to make.